Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. In today's session we're going to be solving the JAMB Mathematics Past Question for 2021. Now we have 40 questions to walk through and I've broken that into 4 parts. So we have each part covering 10 sets of questions. So once you're done with the first part, I encourage you to watch the second part, third part and the fourth part. And also, so you know, I've also recorded the past question for 2022, so you can check that out also. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so you can get daily updates on some of the new questions that are going to be coming along your way, and do make sure to subscribe. So let's get started. Now the first question over here asks us to solve the following equation. So as you can see from this equation, this is pretty much straightforward, and what we have to do is to try to simplify, collect like times, and let's just get started and see where that leads us. So we have 2 over 2r minus 1 then minus 5 over 3 is equals to 1 over r plus 2. So what we have to do first is to find the LCM over here and try to further simplify. So the LCM of these two terms here is going to be 2r minus 1, then we have what, and 3. So you know how we do. Then we have this denominator here divided by this. We're going to be left with 3. Then 3 times 2 is going to give us 6. Then minus 3 by the denominator here is going to give us 2r minus 5. Then we times that by the numerator over here. So we have 5 into bracket 2r minus 1. Then that will be equals to 1 over r plus 2. Now before that simplify, so this is going to be 6 minus, then we expand. So that will be minus 10r, then minus 5 times minus 1 give us plus 5 over, and we can also try to simplify or expand the denominator also. So 3 times 2r is going to give us 6r, and minus 1 times 3 will give us minus 3 is equals to 1 over r plus 2. What we can now do here is what is cross multiply. So when we cross multiply, we have 6 minus 10r plus 5 multiplied by r plus 2 will be equals to 6r minus 3 then multiplied by 1, which is going to be 6r minus 3. So we can try to expand this, but if you see, we can say 6 plus 5 here, collect like times here, so we have 6 plus 5 here is going to give us 11. So this can also be written as 11 minus 10r then multiplied by r plus 2 is equals to 6r minus 3. So what do we do next? We can expand here. So when we expand, what we have is 11 times r is going to give us 11r, then 11 times 2 is going to give us 22, so that'll be plus 22. Then we have minus 10r times r, which is going to be minus 10r squared, and we have minus 10r times 2, which is going to give us minus 20r is equals to 6r minus 3. Then we collect like times. To collect like times, we can bring the collect like times, so we'll bring all this to the other side of the equation. So what do we have? Let's start with having minus 10r squared, then we have plus 11r minus 20r, then I can bring this 6r over here. I have minus 6r, then I have plus 22, then I bring my minus 3 to the other side, which will give me plus 3 will all be equals to 0. So now when I simplify, I have minus 10r squared, then minus 11r minus 20r minus 6r will give me minus 15r, then 22 plus 3 is going to give me 25, so plus 25 is equals to 0. I can also try to further simplify by dividing each term by minus 5. So if I divide through by minus 5, I have what? This becomes 2r squared plus, because minus divided by minus is plus, then plus 3r, then 25 divided by minus 5 will give me minus 5, and 0 divided by any number is going to give me 0. So as you can see, this comes down to be a quadratic equation. Now remember how we solve for quadratic equation. We multiply the first term and the last term together. So when you multiply this by this, we have what? Minus 10r squared. Then we think, what numbers can I multiply to get 10r squared? But when I sum them together, I get 3r. And when you think about this is just going to be 5r and minus 2r. Why? Because 5r times minus 2r will give me minus 10r squared, and 5r plus minus 2r will give me 3r. So I will substitute the value of 3r with what I have over here. So this becomes what? So I have 2r squared, then minus 2r plus 5r minus 5 is equals to 0. So I factor out 2r from here. So I have 2r into bracket r minus 1, and I have plus 5. Try to factor this out also into bracket r, then minus 1 is equals to 0. Then that solves down to be r minus 1 and what? 2r plus 5 is equals to 0. Now I can solve it in individual term. So the first term becomes r minus 1 is equals to 0, and what? 2r plus 5 is equals to 0. So r can be equals to 1, or r in this case will be equals to, when I bring this 5 over to the other side, it's going to be minus 5, and if I divide by 2 over 2. So r is either what? 1 or what? Minus 5 over 2. And that makes option B the correct option. Now you can see that this is a pretty long process. So what you can do in the case of an exam is to try to put in the options into the equation itself. So you can substitute the value of minus 1 for r and see if you get your left hand side equals to the right hand side. And by doing that, you can eliminate each of these options to figure out which of them is the correct option. So that is going to be like a tricky way to attempt this question. And very soon I'm going to be posting a video on how you can apply some short tricks to answer some common questions. But the purpose of this video is just to help you understand how you can tackle these questions in the formal way. Now let's move on to the next question. Hopefully it's not as long as the first. So in how many ways can 2 students be selected from a group of 5 students from a debating competition? Now this is a classic combination problem. And why is it a combination problem? Because we're trying to select 2 students from a group of 5 students, and the order in this case does not matter. What do I mean by the order does not matter? It doesn't matter if you select student A first before you select student B, or if you select student B first before you select student A. So that is what makes it a combination problem. And if this doesn't make too much sense to you, I would suggest you watch my tutorial video on permutations and combinations, where I really go into deeper explanation on these concepts. So now this is a permutation problem, and essentially since we're selecting 2 out of 5, this is just going to be 5 combination 2. Now if you remember the formula for combination for any general case, formula is n combination r is equals to n factorial over n minus r factorial. So we just apply that to this, where we have 5 combination 2, and that's just going to be what? 5 factorial over 5 minus 2 factorial, then 2 factorial, which is what? 5 factorial over 3 factorial, because 5 minus 2 is 3, then 2 factorial. Now remember, 5 factorial is something as saying 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Now 3 factorial is the same thing as saying 3 times 2 times 1, and 2 factorial is the same thing as saying what? 2 times 1. So we just try to cancel out 3, cancel this 3, this 2 cancel this 2, then 2 goes in 4 2 times, so we're just left with what? 5 times 2, and that is what? 10. So the number of ways in which you can select 2 students from a group of 5 is going to be 10 ways, and that makes B the correct option. Now let's move on to the next question. And we're told to find the rate of change of volume of a hemisphere with respect to its radius r when r is 2. Now, what is the formula for the volume of a hemisphere? If you recall, a hemisphere just means half of a sphere. Now, if you recall the formula of a sphere, you know that the formula of a sphere, the volume of a sphere rather, is given as 4/3 pi r cube. So the volume of a hemisphere, let me just represent it as V of h, will just be half of this, which will just be half times 4/3 pi r cube. And 2 goes in 4 twice, so you are left with what? 2/3 pi r cube. So this is the formula for the volume of a hemisphere. But the question is not asking us to calculate the volume. It's telling us to find the rate of change of volume with respect to the radius. Now, when we talk about things like rate of change, we're entering into the territory of differentiation. If you are not too familiar with differentiation, I also have a tutorial video on differentiation and integration, and you can watch that to better understand this concept. So we are not being asked to find the volume of the hemisphere. Instead, we are told to find the rate of change, which will be with respect to the radius, which is something as saying dv over dr. So now, if you recall, to differentiate any term, so let me just give you a brief refresher. So let's say we have a general term. Let's say we have y is equals to a raised to the power n, and want to differentiate y with respect to let's say with respect to a. Now this is just going to be what we're going to bring this power down, so we're going to multiply n by a, and we're going to subtract the 1 from the power, so this is going to be n times a to the power of n minus 1. So I'm going to apply that same concept here. Now remember, this term here, 2/3 pi, is a constant, so we only need to be bothered with this term here, r cube. So applying the same concept, let's just write the constant out first, then we take into better consideration the other term. So what do? As I said, to differentiate r cube, we bring out down the power, so we bring down this 3 over here, which is 3, then we take the r and we minus 1 from the power of r, which is what? 3 minus 1. So what does this become? This becomes 2 pi over 3 times 3 r squared. Now this 3 cancels out this 3, and we're left with what? 2 pi r squared. Now so that is the rate of change of the volume with respect to the radius. But we are told to find that when r is equals to 2. So when r is equals to 2, we can substitute that here and have what? 2 pi, then the value of r will be what? 2 squared. So that just be what? 2 pi times 4. And what would that be? 4 times 2, that would be 8 pi. And that makes A the correct option. So again, you can see that this is quite tricky, but this is just differentiation. Once you're able to figure out that this is a question relating to differentiation, you can differentiate accordingly, and you can simplify before substituting the value of r, then you get your answer. Substituting for the value of r directly is going to lead you to the wrong answer, so you have to be really careful, and you can watch my video on differentiation to get better insight. Now let's move on to the next question, and which asks us to find the maximum value of y is equals to 3x squared plus 5x minus 3. Now this is a classic differentiation question again, and that is when you are trying to find the maximum or the minimum. You know that you're being asked to solve something in the domain of differentiation. So there are 2 steps involved in finding the maximum value of an equation. In this case, you have the quadratic equation. The first step is to differentiate. And why do we differentiate? Because we know that at the turning point, which is going to be the maximum point, at the turning point, we know that dy over dx will be equals to 0. And the second step now is to now substitute the value of x for y, value of x to get y. So what do I mean? Let's start with the first stage. So the first stage involves what? To differentiate this equation and equate it to 0, because you know at the turning point we're going to, the slope or dy over dx is 0. So to differentiate this, we have what? Dy over dx is equals to 3x squared. So we bring down the 2 down here and multiply it by the constant. So 3 times 2 is what? 6x, and raise the power to 2 minus 1. So 2 raised to minus 1 is 1. So x raised by 1 is still 1. So we have 6x plus, and when you differentiate 5x, we're just left with 5. And when you differentiate a constant, it just breaks down to 0. So we know that this must be equals to what? 0. So we can now find the value of x. So we know that 6x in this case will be equals to what? Minus 5. And if we divide both sides by 6, we know that what? X will be equals to what? Minus 5 over 6. Now we've done with the first stage. We found the value of x. But the next thing we need to do now is to now substitute that value of x into the equation to find what the value of y is, which will be the maximum value. So in this case, we have y will now be equals to 3. We know that x in this case is what? Minus 5 over 3. So we have what? Minus 5 over 6 rather. So we have minus 5 over 6 squared plus 5 into brackets minus 5 over 6 minus 3. And what is just left is a matter of what? Simplification. So we have 3 minus 5 squared is 25, because minus times minus is plus, and 6 squared is what? 36. Then plus, well, 5 times minus 5 will just give you minus 25. So let me just write this as minus 25 then over 6 minus 3. Let me make this neater so you don't mistake that. Yeah, clean that off and change that to a minus. So now we can simplify this. We know 3 goes in 36, 12. So this is just what? 25 over 12 minus 25 over 6 minus 3 over 1. Now we know that the LCM of all of this is going to be 12, and this is going to be what? 12 in 12 to have 25. Then we know that 6 in 12 is 2, and 2 times 25 is what? It's going to give me 50. Then we have 1 in 12 is 12, and 12 times 3 is going to give me 36. So I have what? 25 minus 50 minus 36, which give me minus 61 over 12. So the value of y at the maximum point is what? Minus 61 over 12. And as you can see, that is not part of the option. So the correct option here is option D. Moving on to the next question. We are told that a trapezium has 2 parallel sides of length 5 cm and 9 cm. If the area is 91 cm squared, find the distance between the parallel sides. So you know what a trapezium is. So general shape of a trapezium, you have 2 parallel sides. This is the first side. Then you have the other side. There are 2 parallel sides. Then you have, this is generally what we call a trapezium. Now we're told that the shorter length is what? 5 cm, and the longer length is what? 9 cm. Now we're told to find the distance between the parallel sides. In other words, we have been told to find what? The height of the trapezium. So you have to be very careful or smart in that they might twist the wording of the question. But once you understand that the distance between the 2 parallel sides just means the height, then it makes sense that this is a very simple question. So we know that the formula for calculating the area of a trapezium is what? Half times a plus b times the height. Now we've been given the area in this case, which is what? So we know that 91 will be equals to half. Now we know the length of the sides. The first length is what? 5. The second one is 9. And we're told to find the height. So 91 times 2 will give us 182 is equals to 9 plus 5 is 14h. So if we divide both sides by 14, we have what? We have 13 is equals to h. So we know that h is equals to what? 13 centimeter. So the height of the trapezium is 30 centimeter, which is the same thing as the distance between the two parallel sides. So the correct option is option A. And if you want more clarity, you can watch our video where we talk about mensuration and the areas and volumes of shapes, two-dimensional shapes, and also three-dimensional solids. So moving on to the next question, we're told to find the value of P if the line which passes through this coordinate minus or minus P and minus 2 is parallel to the line 2x plus 8x minus 17 is equals to 0. Now the key to answer this question is that we know that both lines are parallel, and we know that if two lines are parallel, what can we say about them? So let me draw two parallel lines. For example, we have two parallel lines. So there's one thing we can say about two parallel lines, and the thing we can say about the both of them is that their slope is equal. Slope is equal. So if this is the slope of the first line m1 and this is the slope of the second line m2, we know that m1 must be equal to m2. So that gives us insight into finding what the slope of this line is. But now I've been given the equation of the second line, so we can determine what the slope of that line is. So we know that the equation of a straight line is given as y is equals to mx plus c. So we have to rewrite this equation in this form before we can compare. So we have 2y plus 8x minus 17 is equals to 0. So let's try to write it in the form of y equals to mx plus c. So we have 2y is equals to minus 8x plus 17. Now if we divide through by 2, so we have what? We have y is equals to what? Minus 4x plus 17 over 2. So now we can compare this with what? With y is equals to mx plus c. And what does that give us? So we can see that the slope is what? M, which is what? Minus 4. So we know that the slope of the line is minus 4. Now we can use that to figure out what the value of P, because if you have a line, let's say, let me just quickly draw a coordinate system also, and let's just draw an arbitrary point here. This is the first point and this is the second point over here. Yes, minus 1 comma minus P, and here let's just say we have minus 2 comma 2 over here, this second point. So now we know that we can find the slope of this second line by using this formula where we have our slope is the same thing as saying what? Y2 minus y1 over what? X2 minus x1. Now I can label what I have over here in terms of the point of the line. So I can call this x1 and this y1, and call this x2 and this y2. Now because I know that this line is going to share the same slope with this line over here, and I figured out that the slope of this line is minus 4, so I can just substitute that here. So m becomes what? Minus 4 is equals to, and y2 in this case is 2, y1 is what? Minus, and y1 is what? Minus P, over x2 is what? Minus 2, and x1 is what? Minus 1. So this just becomes minus 4 is equals to 2 minus times minus is plus P over minus 2, minus times minus also is what? Plus 1. So minus 4 is equals to 2 plus P over, and minus 2 plus 1 is minus 1. So when I cross multiply, I have 2 plus P is equals to, and minus 4 times minus 1 will give me 4, because minus times minus is plus, and P will just be 4 minus 2, and that is equals to 2. So the value of P is what? 2, and that makes D the correct option. So moving on to the next question, we are told that the ratio of the length of two similar triangular blocks is 2:3. If the volume of the larger block is this, find the volume of the other block. Now this is one of those questions where if you understand the relationship between solid blocks, it's quite easy to tackle. The key thing to understand is that we have two rectangular blocks. My drawing is not really good, but bear with me. So let me just do this. So now we have one of the blocks and we have what the other another block which is larger. Yeah, let me just make this larger, marginally larger. Yeah, so this is the smaller block and this is the larger block. Now they are similar in the sense that the ratio between their length is in the ratio of 2 to 3. So I don't want, so for each of the lengths we know that the ratio is what 2 to 3. So that means if the length of one side is 2, the length of the other side will be 3. If the length of the other side is 4, we know that the length of the other side will be 8. So it will be 4. We know that the length of the other side will be 12. So you can try to figure out what that relationship is going to be. But the idea here is that we know that the lengths are what in the ratio of what 2:3. So what we can say is that the area, since the area is just the square of the length, we know that the area is going to be in the ratios of 2 squared to what 3 squared, which is going to be what 4:9. And finally we know that the volume is going to be in the ratios of the cube, which is going to be 2 cube ratio what 3 cube, and that is what 8 ratio 3 cube is what 27. So now that we know that the ratio of the volumes is what 8 to 27, now we're told that the larger block is 351. So to get the smaller block, so we know that the larger block belongs to this 27. So for the volume of the smaller block, we're just going to multiply the larger block by this ratio. So 8/27 times 351, and that is going to give us what? That is going to give us 104. So the volume of the smaller block is 104 centimeter cube. So the correct option to this question is not here. So we found a question where the answer is not listed in the options, but the correct answer here is 104. Now one approach that some people might take, which might be the wrong approach, is just to multiply this directly by this to find what the volume is. For example, some might just say, since the larger block is 351 cm cube, what they just say, okay, the smaller block would be 2/3 times 351. And when you do this, you're going to get 234. Like, 234, wow, that makes sense, that is the answer, just select option A. But that is not the right approach to take, because you are only given the ratios of the length. So we know that the ratios of the volume, we're going to have to cube the ratios of the length first before we can multiply to get the answer. But unfortunately, that correct option is not in this question. So let's move on to the next one. And if you need further clarification on this question specifically, please do leave your comments in the comment and we can hash it out better. Moving on to the 8th question for the JAMB Past Question 2021, we're told to find the derivative of the function at this point. So we know derivative is something like differentiation. So now there are two ways you can attempt it. You can attempt this by using the product rule, but I find that to be quite long, particularly when you can follow a simpler approach. So in the simpler approach, we try to expand first. So to expand, you just do this multiplied by this, and that becomes what? 4x cubed. Then this multiplied by this will give me minus 2x squared. So now I can just apply differentiation directly to this question. So we have dy over dx will be equals to, now when I bring down this down here to differentiate, I multiply my power by 4. So 4 times 3 is 12. So I have 12x, and I reduce it by 1. So this becomes 2. And I apply that also here. 2 times 2 is 4. And I reduce the power by 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1. So there's no point leaving it here. So I know that my derivative of this function is this. We are told to find the derivative at the point at which x is minus 1. So we just substitute the value of x as minus 1 into that. So what does that become? That becomes 12 into brackets minus 1 squared minus 4 into brackets minus 1. So minus 1 squared is 1. So that will be 12 times 1. Then minus times minus will be plus. So that gives me plus 4. So I'm left with 12. 12 times 1 is 12 plus 4. and that is what? And that is 16. So the correct option is what? Option B. So let's move on to the next question. And here we are told to correct this long looking equation to 4 significant figures. Now this is quite easy to do, but I'm going to show you how you can do this taking advantage of a calculator. Now the calculation that I'm going to be using for JAMB, you do not have like sophisticated functions to make do of all of this. That is why you first have to simplify it before making use of a calculator to be able to make tangible headway. So we know from our paired maths rule that we need to first resolve what is in our bracket. So this also can be written as 241.34. Now we need to solve what is in our bracket. So this becomes what we have. Let me write down the question first. 3 times 10 raised to power minus 3 raised to power 2. Now we know that if we have 2 multiplication, let's say a times b to the power of 2, we know that this is the same thing as saying what? A squared times b squared. That is pretty straightforward. So we can apply that same idea here. So we have 241.34 then times 3 squared, which is the first term, then times 10 raised to power minus 3 squared. Now again, from our law of indices, we know that if we have what? A to the power of minus b times n is the same thing as saying a to the power of just multiplying what we have over here minus nb. So we apply the same concept here. So we have 241.34, and we know that 3 times 2 is what? 9, or 3 raised to power 2 rather is 9. Then times this becomes 10 to the power of minus 3 times 2 will give you what? Minus 6. Now the next thing you can do now, and which your calculator can do now, is to multiply 241.34 by 9. And when you do that, you get 2172.06 then times 10 raised to power minus 6. Now what can you do again? We can try to divide this. So what does this mean? Now to multiply by 10 raised to power minus 6 means that we can shift this decimal towards the left 6 times and put the dot. So this is the same thing as saying what? Let me move that. Let me write that here. So that'll be like my 2172.06. So now I'm going to shift it to the left 6 times. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put my dots, and in those spaces there I can put my zeros. So this is the same thing as writing what? 0.00217206. And which option? To 4 significant figures means you just take the first 4 digits after the first 0 that we see, and that just becomes 0.002172, and that makes what? Option D the correct option. Now let's move on to the last question for part 1 of the JAMB Mathematics question for 2021. So here we are told to find the mean deviation of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we know that the formula for the mean deviation, which is like a measure of dispersion, is equals to what? The summation of x, the absolute value of x minus mu, where mu is the mean, over n, and n is the total number. But now we first have to find mu, which is the mean. Now we know that to find the mean, we just need to sum up all our number and divide it by the total number of number, mean in this case, which is mu. So in this case we have what? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 over 4. Now 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is going to give me 10. So 10 over 4 is what? 2.5. So now we know what the value of mu is. So now we can use that to find the mean deviation. So we need to subtract our mean from each of these values, but using the absolute instead. So for the first value we have what? 1 minus 2.5, then plus 2 minus 2.5 plus what? Then we have 3 minus 2.5. Then plus what? 4 minus 2.5. And how many numbers do we have altogether? We have 4 numbers. So 1 minus 2.5 is what? Minus 1.5. Then plus, this is minus 0.5. Then plus, this is what? 0.5. Then plus, this is what? 1.5. Now, as you can see, these are the absolute value. So that means the negative values become positive values also. So the absolute value of minus 1.5 is what? So we have 1.5. The absolute value of minus 0.5 is what? 0.5. The absolute value of 0.5 is still 0.5. And the absolute value of 1.5 is 1.5. So we have this over 4. So 1.5 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 1.5 is going to give me 4. And when I divide that by 4, I'm going to get what? 1. So the mean deviation of 1, 2, 3, and 4 is what? 1. And that makes A the correct option. So that brings us to the end of the first part of our JAMB Mathematics Past Question for 2021. If something is not clear, please feel free to leave your comment. And once I'm available, I'm going to respond to your questions as quickly as possible. And I encourage you now to move on to the second part where we continue solving these questions. See you soon.